Okay, so by the end of this video, what I'm hoping that you'll understand is how to apply quadratic equations to real life situations, which means we're going to look at some word problems. Okay, so let's hop right in. So your first problem is setting up a situation, and here's what it is. I'm going to sell passing grades on the next test, and I actually sat down and figured out an equation, a function that represents how much profit I'm going to make in relation to how many test grades I sell. Right, so I'm actually telling you in this problem, I'm giving you three important pieces of information that we're going to highlight because we're going to use them in both parts of this. Okay, the first one is I gave you the equation. So you always want to look for that. It'll either be provided or you're going to have to write it yourself. In this case, they gave it to you. And then they're going to tell you, based on this equation, I put some variables in there, x. Here's what x represents. X is the number of grades that were sold. Okay, so that's x. Okay, and then p of x, which is my output, represents the amount of money that I'm going to make. That's profit. Right, so they're going to tell me in all of these equations what one of them is so that I can solve for the other one. So if you read the first question, it's saying how much money, right? So they're kind of saying profit is I don't know how much they're asking, right? If I, Mr. Martin, if I sell 14 passing grades. So they're kind of saying I know that the number of passing grades is 14. Okay? So what they're asking us to do in this problem is go to the equation P of, and plug in what x is. I know that x is 14, so I'm going to say 3 times 14 squared plus 500 times 14 plus 2,000. Okay, and now I'm just going to let the calculator do the rest of the work to actually simplify this for me. Okay, so on my calculator, I'm going to go and just type in, I'm going to say this is 3 times 14 squared plus 500 times 14 plus 2,000. Okay, and it's going to tell us that when you plug in 14, you get back 9,588. So let's just write that down. Okay, P of x is equal to 9,588. So they're telling us that the profit for 14 books is $9,588. Right, and that's the answer to their question. How much money? $9,588. Okay, so let's look at the second question. It says how many grades? Okay, so let me go up and get rid of this information because they're giving us some new information in this one. Okay? And they're saying how many grades. So again, the question is number of grades. They don't know. So I'm going to say I don't know this, but they're telling me that the profit, the money that I'm going to make, is 5,000. So they're telling me that profit P of x is 5,000. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to my equation, and now I know what P of x is. So I'm going to say this is 5,000 equals 3x squared plus 500x plus 2,000. Okay? And they're asking me to solve this. They're saying I want to know what is x when P of x is 5,000. So let's solve it. This is a good quadratic formula problem. You can use some other methods, but they'll probably be a little bit more challenging to solve. So I'm going to subtract the 5,000 over to the right-hand side. When we use the quadratic formula, we want it to be set equal to 0. So I'm going to say 500x. When I do 2,000 minus 5,000, I get minus 3,000. Okay? So I'm going to go to my quadratic formula, and it's going to be negative b, negative 500, plus or minus the square root of, and I'm going to do b squared minus 4ac on the calculator. So in this case, b squared would be 500 squared. So I'm going to just type that in. 500 squared minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is negative 3,000. Okay? And that comes out to be 286,000. So I'm going to go to my radical, and I know that under here was b squared minus 4ac, so for us that is 286,000. Okay? And it's all over 2a. Well, our 2 times a would be 2 times 3, which is 6. So I know that my x values, my number of grades sold, is this quadratic plug-in right here. So we just need to simplify this. So I'm going to go and simplify the numerator, one with a plus and one with a minus. So again, we'll go back to our calculator and let it do the work for us. I'm going to say negative 500 plus the square root of 286,000. I'm going to get that answer. Okay, hit enter. Right, you want to get the answer to the numerator first, then divide by 6, and it's telling me 5.79 or 5.8. Right, so let's write that down. We're going to say one of the answers is that x is equal to 5.8. Okay, let's do the same thing again because remember the quadratic formula has a plus and a minus, so I need to go do the same thing. Negative 500 minus the square root of 286,000. Get my answer, which means hit enter. Right? I would need to know what the numerator is divided by 6. And this one's giving me an answer of negative 172.5. So let's write that one down. X equals negative 172.5, okay, with a negative sign here, okay? So let's take a look at what this means. I need to answer their question. I can't just say X equals, look at that, I'm done. They asked me a question. They said, how many grades? Well, X represents grades, and I have 2 different answers here. But we need to think about, do they make sense, and what do they tell us about the situation? So let's take a look at the second one, because that's, I think, the little bit more obvious one. I'm actually saying negative 172.5 grades sold. That doesn't make any sense at all. I can't sell a negative amount of grades, so I'm going to say in this case, that doesn't make any sense at all. Okay? When I look at 5.8, it actually also doesn't make sense to say 5.8 grades. I'm talking about a real life thing here, and 5.8 of a real life thing doesn't make sense. So I'm actually going to say, at 5 books, okay, I hadn't sold enough, right? So at 5 books, let me make that look like a real word, okay? At 5 books, I had not yet reached 5.8. So 5 books is not enough, okay, right? Because it says I have to sell 5.8 books. So like 5 is too small, 5.5 is too small, 5.8 is exactly 5,000, right? So I'm actually going to say you need to sell 6 books, okay, to make $5,000. Okay? I'm going to make a little bit more than $5,000, but to break that $5,000 threshold and be over $5,000, I need to sell 6 books, because 5 is not enough. 6 is exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, so this is a situation where they gave us an equation, and then in the questions, after they described what the variables represented, they said basically, I want to know about one of the variables, I'm going to tell you about the other. In one of the situations, it was just plugging in, right, the right hand side and simplifying. The other one, when we plugged into the left, we had to solve for the other variable. And that's what a lot of these situations are going to be. They're going to give us some information. We have to figure out where it goes in the equation, and then we need to either solve or plug in and simplify.